but I trust them that they are part of the underground network. How would they know Sisanjigela? Ilaitet wako Island Ekima comrade Dulamo transfer. So I knew that the network has activity go and assist him. That's the Sefularo we're talking about. By the way, at that stage, I had already met Ratet Lupas somewhere in Kakasin in Durban, where that was Wentworth whatever, doing the same. A student was struggling, having to finish his studies, still had to put time and assist trade unions. So when Comrade Joe says he worked with Molefi, I'm sure I'm corroborating that. Because he, together with Confi, let alone that they were in the students' politics, together with our square, they also were splitting that valuable second or minute or hour or day, strengthening workers' struggle. Look, I'll get emotional. Let me just fly through. I then met Comrade Sefularo once again. Now, me being a health activist, because of being the sector of Nehau, in the NEC subcommittee of the African National Congress, the subcommittee on health, whilst it was still a shell house during Sisingo Sazana's time. That's the first time I witnessed this so spoken and very hard-hitting comrades. So sevenze igama lesixhosa unyabile rhakithi kaSetswana or kaSepedi. You know, it's like Comrade Iki. If those who know Iki, I said, let's come and listen to the. But when I heard that it skipped the country, I said, that one. And that's Molefi as well. He's so spoken, this one. But look at the other side. Some comrade told me just before we started that he actually was just commanded by him. Deputy, I want you there with his soft voice. That's why I want us to talk about hope, because smiling and angelic as you may seem, deep inside, he was very reverent. It's just that the day you hear things that Molefi did as a kid of Mkondo says, you will realize that we fought for the struggle. We fought to be here. We fought to stand confident that even if we have missed the deadline or deadlines of integrating the healthcare services, we still are going to make it because we have those kind of inspirations. We worked through, I think Comrade Joe and Asgwen were already there now, when the whole wave of an era of dismantling old system, replacing them, up to today when we have the NHI. In a sense, I'm even roping in that that's how I got to know Osman Fali. We shared a couple of subcommittees even before I disappeared as a health activist and I was brought back. Let alone that she's an NC member, let alone that she's been in every level of government. Once again, that's the signal that we should have hope. The last area or era where I had really worked even more closely with Molefi was in Parliament, where we were together in the Portfolio Committee for Trade and Industry. He was a whip, and he had to work as a whip, but he ended up making a de facto, I hope I'm correct, or an informal deputy whip, because it's a whole. a comrade who would share, ensure that you are empowered. Somebody said that when you are out of line, he would give you some documents. He's right. That's Molefi. Always alert, always keen to ensure that you are on a par with him. An internationalist. I once went to Philippines when I was in Parliament. I came back, he said, Mabuhay. Damn if he has left, no. He said, no, I've been around the world. That. You know, one of the things as I move out is, you know, I hope quite a number of you, particularly the youth here, who are students, is the fact that don't think that when you're a professional, you can't be an activist. If you doubt that, Wali Askomot, Wali Comrade Joe, and Wali Asman Khwali, who actually worked with Comrade Molefi more the moment was again, Osfaho Mahat. That's one of the reasons why one has hope. Because those are not just professionals, Dr. Pascal, Dr. Ramohopa, you know, Dr. Sefularo, Dr. Mluko. Those are activists. Those are agents of change. They make things work. I think, Baba, you can say I get emotional. The only thing also I would like just, once again, can John change for the students who are still now, who are future leaders, is humility. I'm talking about all these four comrades. Check if you like. I think they compete with humility. The same person who I was going to speak about, Comrade Khalima, who on his own visited me at Crest Hill, a building in Hillbrook, after I assumed leadership as a Secretary General, or General Secretary in NUM. He went to see me. I remember I was wearing a khaki trousers. I still, Tim Kwarang alone, even today, I still do that. Humility, but being resolute. Anyway, to you, Program Director, I'm sure you would like me to go further, as you can see, one gets quite emotional. It's not easy to talk about people whom you share trenches. You know, we've been to places where people, they make speeches, but when someone has been, in fact, one funeral I spoke for 40 minutes and I told anyone, come to Zangamami, because I was burying a comrade close to me. So sorry, yeah, please. Those who chose me made a mistake of getting me because, I mean, as you can see, I know all these comrades. And I'm trying to be infectious and contagious to you that have hope. Whatever they say, hold them to account. And from today, I'm sure, either in the speeches they make, is the action they will take in memory of Comrade Molefi Sefularo. Manda! I know it's a university, but I'm sorry. We are in the memory of a revolutionary. We are in the memory of a soldier of Mkondo Wesizwe, unapologetic. Kilisole. He faced death so that sikwazi ukuhlala up, planning how to take the fallen spear from him and move forward. Khabuz. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Caesar. I think if our former president would have been here, he would have looked at the time slot that he was given, the time he was accorded to speak, and apologize that we've kept you up to now. But I believe that in celebrating a life well lived, like the life of Molefi Sefularo, he would have forgiven us. He's a very punctual man, very precise, very deliberate, and indeed focused on what needs to be done and ensuring that it's done the way it's supposed to be done. Program Director, I'm greatly humbled to be requested in person by former President Kgalema Motlanthe to present his keynote address in reflecting on the legacy of one of our finest sons of Africa, an internationalist, a true revolutionary who struggled, suffered, and was prepared to die for the liberation of his people and for a better Africa and a just world. As the president of SMU, I was in the middle of my presentation. As I was talking, I was howled at, and I think I was doing second year. It was one of my first moments of speaking and addressing a student body. And I was quickly shut down and forced to sit down, and I felt the pain of not being allowed to air my views. He did something extraordinary. He stopped the SRC, the student body meeting, and asked that I stand up again, and asked the person who held me down to leave the meeting or apologize. And the student body meeting was quiet for some time. They thought he must have been joking. And until that was done, someone stood up, apologized. I think Kelly could have been there at the time, was their student, their SRC actually. Until that person apologized, the meeting could not go ahead. So you can imagine me, that tiny second-year-old woman at that time, student, feeling that here is a man who is actually a feminist, a man who understands that, as I would learn later as a health scientist, that he has a woman in him. His chromosomes are X and Y. Female chromosomes are X and X. Every man has a woman in them. A revolutionary who understood that men and women have equal humanity. So for me, indeed, I'm here to present on behalf of Ndate Kgalema Motlanthe on the legacy of a man who really was indeed the finest son of Africa. I also believe that during the 16 days of activism against violence on women and children, he would have been one of those that have loudly voiced as a man of today, not in my name. I'll now proceed. I open quote. A case for regional integration in the light of COVID-19. On behalf of President Motlanthe, on the occasion of the second Dr. Molefi Sefularo Memorial Lecture. Program Director, Professor Pindile Mtla, the Sefularo family, Mehumoto, the kids, relatives, friends, and comrades of Dr. Sefularo, He would have added Ms. Zanele Mbeki, former First Lady of the Republic of South Africa, an activist and leader in her own right, the Board of Trustees of the Dr. Molefi Sefularo Foundation, Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Pasha, representing Dr. Mkize, the Minister of Health, council members, the Vice Chancellor of the Sefako Makgatu University, represented by Professor Chauke, and the university community as a whole, esteemed academia, other staff members and students, leaders of the African National Congress and the Alliance, Professor Ibo Mandaza, representatives of the civil society organizations, comrades and fellow compatriots. How does one begin to pay tribute to Dr. Molefi Sefularo, a distinguished medic, an intellectual giant, a humble man of the people, a practicing ideologue, a revolutionary and African communist, an unsung hero, a competent servant of the people of South Africa to the end, who left us too soon? Where do I begin and end in honoring such an illustrious life well lived? A life taken away from us at its prime, when as a people and as a movement, we were still expecting so much from. Dear friends, these are some of the questions that came to my mind as I humbly accepted the invitation from the Sefularo family, together with the Dr. Molefi Sefularo Foundation, to deliver this memorial lecture. As I was pondering these questions, I concluded that it is perhaps fitting that I anchor this lecture on the words of Commandant Fidel Castro in his 1967 eulogy to a fellow revolutionary, Che Guevara, when he said the following, open quote, "It is not easy to find in one person all the virtues found in him. It is not easy for a person to be able to develop a personality like his. I would say that he is a type of a man who is difficult to equal and practically impossible to improve on. But I would also say that men like him are able, with their example, the rise virtues are difficult to equal and practically impossible to improve on. As we today honor his memory, we do so in the belief that men like him are able, with their example, to help the rise of other men like him indeed. Accordingly, let us declare boldly that in us, Dr. Molefi Sefularo has not died. One outstanding attribute of Dr. Sefularo was that he interfaced with the grassroots with ease and believed in engaging communities on the challenges that confronted them. It was this very disposition that would have prompted him to utter the following words, I quote, "We found that South Africans want to sit and talk and solve their problems together. It was just to go back to sense and sensibility and just being more open and trusting other South Africans," close quote. Dr. Sefularo's deep roots among the people made him an important interlocutor in the debates that helped shape the programs that the ANC government adopted in the post-1994 era. He carried the belief in the masses into his many roles that he was entrusted with, which include serving 2 terms as the MEC of Health in Northwest, a member of Parliament, and a National Deputy Minister of Health in South Africa. Through this annual and the work of the foundation, we will keep his memory alive. We will immortalize his legacy, which we are proud as of, in keeping with what the examples of Dr. Sefularo has taught us. I hope that this lecture series would continue to stimulate face as a society, especially his passion on the subject matter of the political economy of health and the pursuit of a just world. Perhaps now, more than at any other time, we need to tap into the collective wisdom of our people and let 100 flowers bloom and let 100 schools contend, in line with Chairman Mao's dictum. Let this become a platform for encouraging meaningful dialogue, which highlights our challenges, but even more importantly, one that breeds new ideas on the way forward. Dr. Sefularo would have expected no less of us. I therefore wish to congratulate the foundation and its partner, the Sefako Health Sciences University, for this worthwhile initiative. Among the many challenges that face our country, region, and the world, health ranks high up. It is appropriate that the foundation has elected to focus its 2020-2021 lecture series and public engagement on health-related matters. The man whom we are celebrating was many as alluded above. He was a student leader, a politician, a medical practitioner, but it would not be amiss to venture that his most abiding contribution was a proponent of public health. Dr. Sefularo was an important voice in the discourse around health policy, in which he also played a role in its formulation and implementation. The foundation has decided to focus this lecture series and public engagement to honor his passion around integrating health systems to benefit the broader Africa and especially the SADC population. This perspective is born not only out of his desire to see universal health coverage pursued through the NHI in South Africa, and that it succeeds, but also in recognition that health benefits have to accrue to the entire region if benefits are to be sustainable and meaningful. He was an avid proponent of primary health care and district health systems and services. Comrades, I'm delivering this lecture at a time when our country, the African continent, and the world are engaging in a titanic battle against an invisible enemy that is destroying lives and livelihoods, the COVID-19 pandemic. Appreciating that the Minister of Health will share the details with all of us prior to my address, I will focus on principles and what lessons we must draw from the new normal presented by the epidemic. One of the things this epidemic has taught us is that as humans, we are interconnected, that our destiny is linked, and that without the other, we are incomplete. The pandemic has highlighted the importance of collaboration and integration. For acting alone, none of us can find adequate responses to the pandemic and its resultant economic devastation. Accordingly, it is equally fitting that this lecture is themed a case for regional integration in the light of COVID-19. Comrade Sefularo himself understood and appreciated the power of collaboration and integration. We know this because as a medical student, he was part of those that offered support services to clinics in the surrounding communities, where services were provided by missionaries during apartheid times. And as a community activist in the township of Itsoseng and a medic at Tusong Community Hospital, he championed the integration of Western medicine with indigenous African healing practices. As MEC for Health in the Northwest Province, he successfully led the amalgamation of the fragmented departments of health inherited from the then BOP government, the Western Transvaal TPA Health Services, the Cape Provincial Administration Health Services, and the National Department of Health. Under his stewardship, the Northwest Department of Health was a leader in the country in the implementation of the district health system, which emphasizes cooperation and integration between the Department of Health at national and provincial level, as well as with municipalities and communities. Once deployed as a member of parliament, Dr. Sefularo took a keen interest in ensuring that health policies were integrated into the broader socio-economic policy framework of government. He believed that it was key that health for all must give effect to the Freedom Charter injunction that free medical care and hospitalization shall be provided for all with special care for mothers and young children. Dr. Sefularo held firmly that a healthy populace was central to the attainment of socio-economic development and transformation, and that we so direly yearn for this in South Africa, in the SADC region, and Africa at large. Despite arriving late on our continent, COVID-19 has spread rapidly, taking a heavy toll on human life and causing major disruptions to economic activities, albeit its impact is lesser than in other countries. With lower public resources and health systems that were already under pressure before the outbreak of COVID-19, countries in the sub-Saharan Africa face a particularly daunting task in responding to this epidemic. The World Bank projects that the pandemic will cost Africa between $37 billion and $79 billion in terms of output losses for 2020. It is estimated that African countries will require over $100 billion to respond to healthcare and social safety net needs arising from the pandemic. This sobering reality points to the urgent need for an integrated response at a sub-regional and regional level. Health for all is a clear and specific target of the SADC Health Program, and it is grounded in all its founded documents, common agenda, strategic development plans, as well as the health policy frameworks. Each SADC country, however, develops its legislation on its own, based on its resources, as well as long-term strategic frameworks. South Africa's current health policy thrust is focused on the national health insurance, within which mention is made of health insurance for migrants. Whilst common health campaigns have been undertaken within the SADC sub-region, several questions still arise, and these are: if health for all is to be realized within SADC, policy harmonization between member states becomes critical, especially given the limited resources. How much of this is happening? Secondly, free flow of people within SADC, both legal and illegal, is an everyday reality. Does our current planning take this into account? Is our response to this cross-border health-seeking behavior practical, systematic, efficient, and well-planned, or is it erratic? The next question: to what extent does South Africa's national health policy framework provide adequate resources allocation at this point of care? And is this done in collaboration and in discussion with our neighboring countries? Are these mechanisms planned or existing for cross-border tracking? Are there mechanisms planned or existing for cross-border tracking, especially in infectious communicable diseases? What lessons lessons have we learned from COVID-19? Many diseases, such as communicable and non-communicable diseases, have in the past plagued this continent, but were mostly dealt with without expecting the involvement of all of the neighboring countries. This has not been until now, there has not been until now any need for rigorous tracing of people's movement to ensure containment of diseases in the scale it had to be done in centuries with the COVID pandemic. The advent of COVID-19 as a pandemic and resultant responses has sharply exposed the massive cracks in the ability of the African region to respond successfully to health crises. It is a known fact that citizens of the region in need of medical attention, especially of a sophisticated nature, have gravitated towards where the resources and expertise are located. In chasing the quality outcomes people rightfully deserve, there is a clear and persistent flow across borders. The pattern of movement of economic refuge. South Africa has attracted a lot of migrants for several reasons. For economic migrants, asylum seekers from war-ravaged neighbors, amongst others. These are attracted to our country for opportunities, including healthcare. This, however, does not stop those who come in through illegal means, who in terms of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights may not be refused, especially emergency care, or some of the humanitarian services, basic services that all humans require. This has not been well managed, we must contend. And already. As migrants cross in and out unnoticed, a whole range of problems can arise for countries involved. Our healthcare system and those of our SADC neighbors are based on demographic and health surveys, which collect and use data to monitor and evaluate population health and nutrition programs, amongst others. The surveys have directed funding as per the morbidity and mortality of catchment populations. This notion of the catchment population ignores just about all the dynamics referred to above. Demand healthcare systems and complementary funding mechanisms, and must recognize the reality brought about by disparities in resources, expertise, and outcomes. Over and above this, the free trade and tourism we want to encourage within SADC and beyond demands of all members to improve their respective health systems, but more crucially, require better coordination, such as attempted in the control of malaria, TB, and now recently with COVID-19. Whilst regional health integration is the ideal that we must aspire to, perhaps more and more efforts need to go into a harmonized regional policy framework that is an essential stepping stone for interoperable systems required to enable better planning, coordination, patient referral, outbreak response, and reporting systems. The above requires a concentrated amount of research and development of a conceptual framework that can then inform the policy at country level and within the region itself. This integrated response must go beyond healthcare use. It must touch every aspect of human endeavor. The World Health Organization talks about health in all policies. This is the time for health in all policies. The new normal of a digital dispensation we now also use even during this lecture, must spur us to think out of the box in turning the tide against ill health and despair as envisaged by the Africa Agenda 2063. The implementation of the Free Africa Trade Area is an important step in this direction. And as chair of the African Union, the priorities that President Ramaphosa has outlined become also critical. Amongst others, these are enhancing the African Union, United Nations cooperation, strengthening multilateralism. Secondly, promoting good governance, ethical leadership, visionaries, and leaders that care. Thirdly, driving a skills revolution and uptake of digital technologies. Fourthly, supporting people living under the yoke of oppression in areas that are ravaged by strife as well as tensions. Tackling gender inequality, ending conflict, and silencing the guns in Africa, as well as unlocking Africa's economic potential through the implementation of this Africa Continental Free Trade Area. As reflected by Christopher Edegu, the African Continent Free Trade Area establishes an estimated $3.4 trillion economic free trade bloc of 54 African nations with 1.3 billion people. It aims to reignite African industrialization, integrate the continent into a global value chain, boost infrastructure development, and enable free movement of goods, people, and services. Although COVID-19 might have delayed the implementation of this free trade area, it has also reinforced the rationality of having a coherent continental integration bloc and the urgent need to draw on economies of scale offered by the agreement to boost industrialization and manufacturing capabilities. The development of regional value chains and local manufacturing capabilities will lessen dependence on imports and negative spillover effects of disruptions of global supply chains as we've experienced associated with COVID-19. It is therefore important that building on the progress made in the Millennium Development Goals era, a case is made for African governments to invest in healthcare, especially given that healthcare expenditure in Africa is much less than the WHO recommended 5% of GDP. This becomes crucial as we implement the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Generously endowed, and this is towards the conclusion, generously endowed with natural resources, minerals, land, and above all, a youthful population, the African region only needs ethical, visionary, and caring leadership, as well as especially mindful of what Comrade Sefularo stood for, an active and capable citizenry. Active and capable citizenry remain the necessary catalyst for Africa's children to live to their full potential in a healthier and more prosperous and sustainable Africa. Given her endowments, this is possible. Let us analyze, spend time on intellectually engaging with the challenges facing us. But like Molefi Sefularo was, we need to also act and act decisively. The time is now. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Comrade Gwen Ramaphosa, for you have been ably I get emotional when I think about my experience with Molefi, but I think let's move on. Before I call on the last item in our program, I just thought of just reminding those of us who were with Molefi when we started off in the then Medusa, and also just learning from what I said when he described who Molefi Sefularo was. I tend to say the height of a pinnacle is determined by its base. For Molefi, in my analysis, maintained three beliefs in his life, which turned all adversity into advantages. I found in Molefi commitment, which at all times led him to strive to be involved in all ongoing events rather than feel isolated. He seemed to have control of his environment all the time, which led him to struggle and try to influence outcomes rather than to lapse into passivity and powerlessness. And he always loved challenge. I'm sure many of you can attest to that, because it led him to view stress changes, whether positive or negative, as opportunities for new learning. I now call on Master Sefularo to give us a vote of thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, let me acknowledge Ms. Member of Parliament, Ndati Mapulan. I also see familiar faces of those who worked with Papa in the Northwest Department of Health. Those of you who join us from afar through the power of the internet, Program Director. Allow me to thank you for the opportunity to represent the Sefularo family as we express our heartfelt gratitude to all those who made this day possible. It is indeed awe-inspiring to have had this kind of support in remembering Papa's work, his contributions and aspirations a decade after his passing. Our speakers here today, the enthusiasm with which you took up the task is humbling indeed. All of you with a very rich history with my father. In his tribute to Papa in 2010, former President Kgalema Motlanthe wrote, "Here was a man cut above the rest, who prized executing his duties in selfless service to his beloved country. Here was a man whose professional life bears testimony to the Hippocratic Oath, which urges medical practitioners to act to the best of their abilities to prevent diseases and care for patients irrespective of their race or class. Here was a man, a very rare individual, who remained a core member of society without demonstrating any false graces, but sought to align his training and expertise with the needs of his fellow human beings. Mkhulwa, we as a family understand the reasons for your absence today, and we're thankful for your selection of a fitting representative in Mera Mokgopa, who is also a friend of the family. Dr. Mkhize, your leadership through these troubling times has been remarkable. As we face the threat of a resurgence of COVID-19 in this country, we understand why you too could not be here today. Ntate Phatla, a comrade and colleague of Papa's, as you said earlier, you shared more than just that with my father. We are honored and we thank you for accepting the call to be here with us today. Ntate Mandaza and Zimbabwe, Prof. Mokoena, we are grateful for the time and effort that went into the preparations for today, for making a meaningful contribution to the discussion, which we trust will inspire leadership and action towards realizing quality health care for all in this region. Ntate Njikelane, if I had inherited the history and credentials, I would say to you, comrade, re a go leboga. To the interim board of the Dr. Molefi Sefularo Foundation, Dr. Confidence Moloko, Dr. Jacob Bo, Ms. Anna Mjale, Mr. Saul Molobi, and you, Mama. Thank you for helping us bring this organ to life, and we look forward to the work it shall do to refine it and to make it a hub of knowledge, innovation, and leadership. The Sefako Makgato Health Sciences University, we are grateful for the many years of working together positively to honor Papa's memory. Prof. Mbati, Prof. Chauke, Dr. Pule and his team, we thank you. Professor Mtla, you have done a sterling job in a time where events are not what we are used to. I thank you very much for your time. I would like to thank my longtime friend, Maswele Ralebona, for being a reliable partner in the organizing committee since 2017. Allow me please to thank my family. Mama, for your commitment in keeping Papa's legacy alive, for loving him with the same conviction in death as you did in life. To my siblings, I think you'll agree that all the efforts that went into today were in memory of our baby sister, Ipeleng, who now lies in an eternal slumber by Papa's side. May her beautiful soul rest in peace. The grandchildren, who make it easy to keep Papa's memory alive in our home by lapping up all the stories that we tell them, reminding us of the love and the lessons in all Papa did for his people in this beloved country. To you who made the time and effort to be a part of today's event, those who made tiny yet significant contributions towards this day, re lebogela tshegetso le matsapa ka dinako tsotlhe, re re le kamoso. Lastly, as we mark 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we, as the Dr. Molefi Sefularo Foundation and the family, urge all South Africans to move beyond talking, slogans, and hashtags. Let's take impactful steps in our homes, in our communities, and even in our political parties. We plead with the government, with our law enforcement officers, to act now to protect women, children, members of the LGBTQI+ community who are at higher risk. If you were here today, I would say to my father, I am ever so proud to be your daughter. I am amazed each day by the brilliance of your mind. I am thankful for the relationships you built and preserved that we enjoy even in your absence. To all of you here today, may we continue to make real on my father's dreams and his aspirations. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Master Chairman. I now will call on the Deputy just to give us guidance of what will then happen from here onwards as we've come to the end of the program.
Thanks once again for everybody who joined us. I think going forward, there's a lot of work for the foundation. There is certainly a lot of work for the many supporters that's been with us, that's been supporting. For those of you that are here, there is tea and snacks at the back of the hall for you before going home. But once again, thanks for everybody. Look at the space. We will have more talks. We will have more engagements. We will certainly have a great deal more activities that we will communicate to you. But thanks for having joined us. Thank you very much. Bye-bye to everyone.